Marry him or leave, Cynthia snapped, her voice venomous. Serenity Allen, radiant with long, straight hair, stood trembling in a worn dress, her mother's silver necklace her only solace. In Savannah's cold courthouse, her white stepmother, Cynthia, forced her to wed Owen Harris, a blind beggar, to spare her daughter Abigail from a doomed engagement. Cynthia smirked triumphantly. Abigail mocked, "Enjoy your miserable life," while Serenity's father, Henry, bowed his head in shame. Tears rolled down Serenity's cheeks as she choked out, "I do," her heart shattered by betrayal. Unbeknownst to all, Owen wasn't blind or poor, a millionaire in disguise, holding a secret that would upend their cruel plan. Could Serenity rise from this pain? What lies beneath Owen's facade? Will karma catch Cynthia's malice? Comment your predictions below. Rate this story 1 if it grips you, 0 if it doesn't. Stay tuned. Serenity's journey will captivate you. Serenity Allen's fingers traced the worn keys of an old piano, each note a fragile thread to her mother's memory. In the cramped Savannah apartment, where the air hung heavy with dust and regret, the 27-year-old's long, straight hair fell like a dark curtain over her face, shielding her from the world's cruelty. Her deep brown eyes, once bright with dreams, now flickered with a quiet ache. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but in this house her radiance was a curse. The music she played, soft, soulful, a melody she'd composed in secret, was her rebellion against the woman who sought to break her. Cynthia, her white stepmother, ruled the Allen household with a venomous tongue, her every word laced with envy for Serenity's grace. Tonight, as the piano's notes filled the room, Cynthia's sharp voice cut through like a blade. "Stop that racket," Cynthia barked, storming in from the kitchen, her pale face twisted in disdain. "You think you're some kind of artist? A black girl like you should know her place. Cleaning, not dreaming." Serenity's hands froze on the keys, her heart sinking. She bit her lip, swallowing the retort that burned in her throat. Cynthia's hazel eyes raked over her, lingering on her long hair with a sneer. "And that hair, always showing off. Comb it back, girl, or I'll cut it myself." Serenity's fingers tightened into fists, but she said nothing. Silence was her shield, honed over years of enduring Cynthia's malice. 10 years ago, Serenity's world had been whole. Her mother, Elise, a pianist whose music could hush a storm, filled their modest Savannah home with laughter and love. Elise would sit Serenity on her lap, guiding her tiny hands over the piano, whispering, "Your music will change the world, my star." But a car crash stole Elise when Serenity was 17, leaving her with her father, Henry Allen, a factory worker whose grief drowned in whiskey. Henry's love for his daughter faded with each bottle, his eyes growing distant, his voice silent. Into that void stepped Cynthia, a bank teller with ambitions as sharp as her cheekbones, bringing her daughter Abigail, a 27-year-old mirror of her mother's arrogance. Together they turned Serenity's life into a relentless battle. Cynthia's arrival was a slow poison. At first she played the part of a caring stepmother, cooking meals and asking about Serenity's school. But the mask slipped fast. She controlled the family's meager funds, denying Serenity sheet music, new clothes, or even sanitary products, forcing her to scavenge in shame. "You don't need fancy things," Cynthia would snap, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're not Abigail." Serenity's beauty, her smooth skin, her elegant frame, her hair that flowed like silk, seemed to inflame Cynthia's envy. "You think you're special?" she'd hiss, her words cutting deeper than any slap. Abigail, with her blonde curls and smug smile, echoed her mother's cruelty, taunting Serenity at every turn. "You're nothing but a burden," Abigail would say, flipping her hair with a laugh. "Mama's right. You'll never amount to anything." The apartment, once a sanctuary of Elise's music, became a prison. Cynthia piled chores on Serenity, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, caring for Ethan, her toddler son with Henry, until exhaustion claimed her nights. Serenity's dreams of composing symphonies and opening an arts center for kids like her were mocked as childish fantasies. One evening, desperate to keep her music alive, Serenity saved pennies from odd jobs to buy sheet music. She hid it under her mattress, but Cynthia found it. tearing the pages to shreds. "This is garbage, just like you," she sneered, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Serenity's chest tightened, her breath catching as she watched her notes scatter like ashes. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but Henry's silence from the next room stopped her. His cowardice was a wound as deep as Cynthia's words. The engagement between the Allen and Harris families, forged when Serenity was a child, hung over her like a shadow. Henry and Robert Harris, Owen's father, had been friends, their bonds sealed by a promise to unite their children. Owen, once a celebrated media mogul, was a name whispered with awe in Savannah circles. But rumors swirled that he'd lost everything, his wealth, his sight, in a tragic accident. Cynthia seized the gossip like a weapon. "Abigail won't marry a broken man," she declared to Henry one night, her voice low but fierce. "Serenity will take her place. She's got no future anyway." Henry, slumped in his chair, merely grunted, his bottle clinking against the table. Serenity overheard from the hallway, her heart pounding with dread. She was to be sacrificed, her dreams discarded, to save Abigail's prospects. Abigail reveled in the plan. One afternoon, as Serenity washed dishes, Abigail leaned against the counter, her blue eyes glinting. "You're perfect for a beggar," she said, her voice sweet with malice. "I mean, look at you, always so pitiful. I'll be sipping champagne with a real millionaire while you're stuck with that blind nobody." Serenity's hands shook in the soapy water, her reflection distorted in the sink. She wanted to hurl the plate at Abigail's smug face, but the weight of her reality held her back. She was trapped, her father's silence a chain, Cynthia's hatred a cage, the racial sting in Abigail's words, her assumption that Serenity, as a black woman, deserved less, burned like acid. Yet deep within, Elise's voice whispered, "You're meant to shine." Serenity's only escape was a Savannah park, where a public piano stood under sprawling oaks. There she poured her pain into music, her fingers dancing over the keys, crafting melodies that spoke of loss and hope. It was there she met Owen Harris, a man in tattered clothes, his sunglasses hiding his eyes, a white cane by his side. His sign read, "Music heals the soul." He'd listened to her play, his head tilted, and ask, "What's your song saying today?" His voice was gentle, a balm to her wounds. Serenity shared fragments of her story, her mother's death, her dreams of an art center, never imagining he was the man she was betrothed to. Owen's kindness, so rare in her world, became a lifeline, though she couldn't shake the fear that it, too, might betray her. As Cynthia's plan to force the marriage took shape, Serenity's heart grew heavier. She lay awake at night, her long hair splayed across the pillow, staring at the ceiling. The piano's keys haunted her dreams, each note a plea to escape. She clutched her mother's necklace, its cool silver a reminder of Elise's love. Could she endure this? Could she marry a stranger to appease a woman who despised her? The thought of Owen, the park's gentle listener, stirred a flicker of hope, but also confusion. Why had he agreed to this marriage? Was he as powerless as she was? The answers eluded her, but one truth burned bright. She would not let Cynthia's hatred extinguish her light. Serenity Allen's fingers trembled as she hid a crumpled sheet of music beneath her thin mattress, her long, straight hair brushing her shoulders like a protective veil. In the dim Savannah apartment, the air was thick with tension, each creak of the floorboards a warning of Cynthia's wrath. Serenity's heart ached, not just from the loss of her mother Elise, but from the daily venom of her white stepmother, whose hatred seemed to grow with every note Serenity played. At 27, her beauty, deep brown eyes, a grace that shone despite her worn clothes, was a spark Cynthia sought to snuff out. The piano, once Elise's sanctuary, was now a battleground, and Serenity's music was her defiance, a melody woven with pain and dreams that refused to die. Cynthia's voice sliced through the evening's stillness. "You're still scribbling that nonsense?" she sneered, bursting into Serenity's tiny room, her pale face twisted with contempt. "A black girl like you, dreaming of music? You're no artist, just a burden." Serenity's breath caught, her fingers clutching the mattress edge. She wanted to scream that her music was her mother's legacy, that each note carried Elise's love, but fear held her tongue. Cynthia's hazel eyes glinted with malice, her gaze lingering on Serenity's long hair. "And that hair," she spat, "always flaunting it. Keep it tied back, or I'll make sure it's gone." The threat wasn't idle. Cynthia had once snipped a lock of Serenity's hair during a lesson in humility, leaving her sobbing in the bathroom mirror. The apartment was a prison, its walls echoing with Cynthia's cruelty and Henry's silence. Serenity's father, once a man who laughed with Elise, was now a shadow, his days spent at the factory and his nights lost in whiskey. He'd let Cynthia take over, her control absolute. She denied Serenity necessities, sheet music, decent clothes, sanitary products, forcing her to scavenge or barter in secret. "You don't deserve new things," Cynthia would say, tossing Serenity's requests aside while buying Abigail, her 27-year-old daughter, designer dresses. Abigail, with her blonde curls and smug smile, was Cynthia's pride, a white mirror of her mother's ambition. "You're just the help, Serenity," Abigail would taunt, her voice dripping with superiority as she lounged in the living room, flipping through fashion magazines. "Mama's right. You belong in the shadows." Serenity's dreams were a flickering flame in this darkness. Elise had taught her to play piano, whispering tales of opening an art center where kids could find solace in music, just as Serenity had. "Your songs will heal hearts," Elise would say, her fingers guiding Serenity's over the keys. But Cynthia saw those dreams as a threat, a reminder of Elise's elegance that outshone her own. One night, Serenity poured her pain into a new composition, a haunting melody of loss and hope. She played softly, fearing Cynthia's wrath, but Abigail caught her. "What's this garbage?" Abigail laughed, snatching the sheet music and waving it like a trophy. "You think you're special? You're nothing." She tore the pages, scattering them across the floor. Serenity's chest tightened, her vision blurring with tears as she knelt to gather the pieces, each fragment a wound. Henry's silence was the deepest cut. He sat in his armchair, bottle in hand, as Abigail mocked Serenity. "Stop making trouble," he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. Serenity's heart twisted. Her father's indifference was a betrayal sharper than Cynthia's words. The racial sting in their cruelty, Cynthia's sneers about her blackness, Abigail's assumption of superiority, burned like salt in an open wound. Serenity was an outsider in her own home, her beauty and talent a provocation to their envy. Yet she clung to her mother's words, "You're meant to shine." She hid her music, playing only when the house was empty, each note a quiet act of rebellion against their hatred. Her only refuge was a savanna park, where Spanish moss draped ancient oaks and a public piano stood like a beacon. There Serenity could play freely, her long hair swaying as her fingers danced over the keys, crafting melodies that spoke of her pain. It was there she first saw Owen Harris, a white man in tattered clothes, his sunglasses hiding his eyes, a white cane resting beside him. His sign read, "Music heals the soul." He'd sit quietly, head tilted, listening to her play. One evening as the sun dipped low, he spoke. "Your music, it's got a story. What is it?" Serenity hesitated, her heart wary, but his voice was gentle, free of judgment. She shared a fragment of her truth, her mother's death, her dream of an art center. Owen nodded, his smile soft. "Keep playing, Serenity. Your story's worth telling." Their conversations became a lifeline. Serenity visited the park daily, her music a bridge between them. Owen never asked for anything, only listened, his words sparking hope she thought was lost. "Pain makes the best songs," he'd say, his voice steady. She brought him scraps, a cookie, a bottle of water, slipped from Cynthia's kitchen, her heart warming at his gratitude. "You're kind," he'd murmur, as if her small gifts were treasures. Serenity didn't know Owen was the man she was betrothed to, the supposed blind beggar of Cynthia's scheme. She only knew he saw her, not as a burden, but as a soul with dreams. His kindness was a flicker of light in her darkness, though she feared it might be another illusion. Cynthia's plan loomed closer, her voice growing sharper with each passing day. "You'll marry that useless man," she told Serenity one evening, her lips curling. "Abigail's too good for him, but you're perfect for a nobody." Serenity's stomach churned. the weight of the engagement crushing her. She'd overheard Cynthia plotting with Henry. Owen's broke, blind, a failure. Serenity takes him, and Abigail's free for a real man. Henry's grunt was his only reply, his silence a blade in Serenity's heart. Abigail, lounging nearby, chimed in. You'll look great with a beggar, Serenity. Maybe he'll like your stupid music. Her laughter was a dagger, twisting deeper with every word. Serenity lay awake that night, her long hair splayed across the pillow, her mother's necklace cool against her skin. The piano's keys haunted her, each note a plea to escape. She thought of Owen, his gentle voice, his sign about music healing souls. Could he be as trapped as she was? Could she marry a stranger to appease Cynthia's hatred? The questions swirled, unanswered, but Elise's voice echoed in her mind. You're destined to shine. Serenity's fingers traced the necklace, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't let Cynthia's malice extinguish her light, but the path ahead was shrouded in fear. Serenity Allen's heart thudded as she knelt on the worn linoleum of the Savannah apartment, gathering the torn remnants of her latest composition. Her long, straight hair fell over her face, a shield against the sting of Cynthia's latest assault. The sheet music, painstakingly crafted in stolen moments, lay in shreds, each jagged piece a fresh wound. At 27, Serenity's beauty, her deep brown eyes, her graceful poise, was a silent defiance, but it only fueled her white stepmother's venom. Cynthia's laughter still echoed from the kitchen, where she'd ripped the pages with gleeful malice, her voice sharp as broken glass. You call this music? It's trash, just like you. Serenity's fingers trembled, clutching the fragments, her chest tight with a grief that felt like losing her mother, Elise, all over again. Cynthia's cruelty had grown sharper, a blade honed by envy. She despised Serenity's radiance, her long hair a symbol of the elegance she could never match. You think you're something special? Cynthia sneered, storming back into the room, her pale face twisted with spite. A black girl like you, scribbling notes? You belong in a maid's uniform, not a concert hall. Serenity's breath hitched, her eyes burning with unshed tears. She wanted to scream that her music was Elise's legacy, a dream of opening an arts center for kids who had nothing. But Cynthia's gaze, cold and calculating, silenced her. Keep that hair tied back, Cynthia added, her voice low with threat, or I'll make sure it's gone for good. The memory of Cynthia snipping a lock of her hair years ago, a lesson in humility, made Serenity's skin crawl. The apartment was a battleground, its cramped walls suffocating under Cynthia's reign. She controlled every penny, denying Serenity sheet music, decent clothes, or sanitary products, forcing her to scavenge in shame. You don't deserve nice things, Cynthia would snap, her hazel eyes glinting as she handed Abigail, her 27-year-old daughter, bags of new dresses. Abigail, with her blonde curls and smug smirk, was Cynthia's pride, a white reflection of her ambition. She'd lounge on the couch, flipping through magazines, taunting Serenity as she scrubbed floors. You're just the help, Abigail said one evening, her voice dripping with scorn. Mama's right. You'll never be anything but a nobody. Serenity's hands shook as she mopped, the racial sting in Abigail's words cutting deep, a reminder that in this house, her blackness was a crime. Cynthia's malice wasn't just verbal. At Abigail's 27th birthday party, she forced Serenity to serve guests, her voice loud and mocking. Hurry up, girl. Don't embarrass us. Guests laughed as Serenity, in a faded dress, carried trays, her long hair tucked tightly to avoid Cynthia's wrath. Abigail leaned in, whispering, Look at you, the perfect servant. Bet you love it. Serenity's cheeks burned, humiliation twisting in her gut. She wanted to fling the tray, to shout that she was more than their pawn, but the weight of their laughter held her still. Later, alone in her room, she clutched her mother's silver necklace, its cool metal grounding her. Elise's words whispered through her pain, You're meant to shine. But how when every step was a struggle? The engagement to Owen Harris, a promise from her childhood, had become Cynthia's weapon. Years ago, Henry and Robert Harris, Owen's father, had sealed their friendship with a vow to unite their children. Owen, once a celebrated media mogul, was a name that sparkled in Savannah's gossip. But a rumor, sparked by a fabricated article Cynthia devoured, claimed he'd lost his fortune and sight in an accident. Cynthia saw her chance. Abigail won't marry a broken man, she told Henry one night, her voice a venomous hiss. Serenity's the one for him. She's got no prospects anyway. Henry slumped in his armchair, bottle clinking, merely nodded. Serenity overheard from the hallway, her heart pounding with dread. She was to be sacrificed, her dreams of music and an art center discarded to save Abigail's future. Cynthia's scheme grew crueler by the day. She cornered Serenity in the kitchen, her lips curling. "You'll marry that useless Owen Harris," she said, her tone final. "Abigail deserves a real man, not a blind beggar. You're perfect for trash like him." Serenity's stomach churned, her fingers gripping the counter. "I don't even know him," she whispered, her voice breaking. Cynthia laughed, cold and sharp. "You don't need to know him. You're lucky anyone would take you." The racial undertone in her words, her disdain for Serenity's black heritage, felt like a slap. Serenity's eyes flicked to Henry, sitting silently nearby, but he looked away, his cowardice a deeper betrayal than Cynthia's hatred. Abigail reveled in the plan. "You and that beggar will make a cute couple," she taunted, leaning against the fridge, her blue eyes glinting. "I'll be dancing at my own wedding to a millionaire while you're stuck with nothing." Serenity's chest tightened, her vision blurring. She wanted to scream, to tell Abigail she was more than their pawn, but the weight of their cruelty silenced her. The apartment felt smaller, its walls closing in, trapping her in a life she didn't choose. She thought of her mother's piano, now locked by Cynthia's orders, its silence a mirror of her own stifled dreams. Her only solace was the Savannah Park, where a public piano stood beneath ancient oaks. There Serenity played, her long hair swaying, her melodies a cry against her pain. Owen Harris, the man with the white cane and gentle voice, was often there, his sign reading, "Music heals the soul." He'd listen, head tilted, and ask, "What's your song saying today?" Serenity shared fragments of her hurt, her mother's death, her dream of an art center, never suspecting he was her betrothed. "Your music's got power," Owen said one evening, his voice steady. "Don't let anyone take that from you." Serenity's heart warmed, his words a flicker of hope, but fear lingered. Could she trust this stranger when her own family betrayed her? As Cynthia's plan tightened its grip, Serenity felt the noose of her fate. She lay awake, her long hair splayed across the pillow, her mother's necklace cool against her skin. The piano's silent keys haunted her, each note a dream she refused to let die. Could she endure this marriage? Could she face a stranger to escape Cynthia's cage? Elise's voice echoed, "You're meant to shine." Serenity's resolve hardened, but the path ahead was a storm of fear and defiance. Serenity Allen's fingers danced over the weathered keys of the public piano, each note a lifeline in the storm of her life. Beneath Savannah's ancient oaks, draped in Spanish moss, the park was her haven, where the world's cruelty couldn't reach. At 27, her beauty, long, straight hair flowing like a dark river, deep brown eyes shimmering with unspoken dreams, was a quiet rebellion against the hatred that defined her home. The piano's melody, a haunting blend of sorrow and defiance, carried her mother's spirit, a whisper of Elise's love that refused to fade. Serenity's heart ached, not just from Cynthia's venom or Abigail's scorn, but from the weight of a future she couldn't control. Yet here, in this fleeting sanctuary, she could breathe, her music a shield against the pain that threatened to break her. The park was a world apart from the suffocating apartment where Cynthia's voice ruled like a tyrant. Serenity's stepmother had made her life a battlefield, her every word a dagger aimed at Serenity's blackness, her talent, her very existence. "You're no artist," Cynthia's sneer echoed in Serenity's mind as she played, the memory of shredded sheet music burning in her chest. Abigail's laughter, sharp and cruel, followed close behind, her taunts, "You're just the help," a constant reminder of her place in their eyes. Henry's silence, his whiskey-soaked indifference, was the deepest wound, a father's betrayal that cuts sharper than words. But in the park, under the golden dusk, Serenity was free to pour her pain into music, each note a cry for the art center she dreamed of, a place where kids like her could find solace. She played with a fervor that turned heads, her long hair swaying, catching the fading light. Passers-by paused, drawn by the raw emotion in her song. But one figure stood out. Owen Harris, the man with the white cane and worn jacket, his sunglasses hiding his eyes. His sign, Music Heals the Soul, rested beside him as he sat on a bench, head tilted, listening. Serenity had noticed him weeks ago, his quiet presence a contrast to the chaos of her life. She'd never spoken to him, wary of strangers, her trust eroded by years of betrayal. But tonight, as her melody faltered, a sob breaking through, Owen's voice cut through the silence. "Your song's got a story," he said, his tone gentle, almost reverent. "What's it telling today?" Serenity froze, her fingers hovering over the keys. Her heart raced, torn between fear and the need to be heard. "It's about loss," she whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes fixed on the piano. "My mother, she was my music. Now she's gone, and I'm trapped." Owen nodded, his sunglasses reflecting the sunset. "I hear it," he said softly. "Loss makes the best songs, but it doesn't have to end there. What do you dream of?" Serenity hesitated, her mother's necklace cool against her skin. No one had asked her that in years. "I want to compose," she said, her voice gaining strength. "To open an art center for kids who have nothing. To give them what I've lost." Owen's smile was small but warm, a beacon in her darkness. "That's a dream worth fighting for," he said. "Don't let anyone steal it." His words pierced her, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. She studied him, his weathered clothes, his calm demeanor, and felt a connection she couldn't explain. Was it his kindness, so rare in her world? Or the way he seemed to see her, even through those dark glasses? She didn't know, but his presence eased the ache, if only for a moment. Their conversations grew, a ritual born under the oaks. Serenity returned daily, her music drawing Owen like a moth to flame. She shared fragments of her life, her mother's death, the art center she envisioned, the cruelty that shadowed her days. Owen listened, never judging, his words steady and sure. "Pain shapes art," he said one evening, as Serenity played a softer tune. "Your music's got power because of what you've endured." She brought him small gifts, a cookie, a bottle of water, slipped from Cynthia's kitchen, her heart warming at his gratitude. "You're too kind," he'd murmur, as if her scraps were treasures. Serenity didn't know he was the man she was betrothed to, the blind beggar of Cynthia's scheme. She only knew he saw her, not as a burden, but as a soul with dreams. But the park couldn't shield her forever. At home, Cynthia's cruelty sharpened, her plan to force Serenity into marriage gaining momentum. "You'll take that useless Owen Harris," she snapped one night, her voice cold as ice. "Abigail's meant for better things." Serenity's stomach twisted, the weight of the engagement crushing her. She'd heard Cynthia plotting with Henry, her words venomous. "Owen's broke, blind, a nobody. Serenity's perfect for him." Henry's grunt was his only reply, his silence a knife in Serenity's heart. Abigail, lounging nearby, chimed in. "You'll look great with a beggar, Serenity. Maybe he'll like your pathetic songs." Her laughter was a lash, each word laced with racial disdain. Serenity's refuge grew precarious. Cynthia caught her sneaking out to the park, her eyes narrowing. "What's this? Running off to play your little tunes?" she hissed, snatching Serenity's bag and finding a water bottle meant for Owen. "You're stealing from my kitchen for some hobo?" Serenity's cheeks burned, her voice shaking. "He's kind to me," she said, the words slipping out. Cynthia laughed, sharp and cruel. "Kind? He's nothing, just like you." She tossed the bottle aside, her gaze cutting through Serenity's long hair. "Keep wasting your time, girl. It won't change your fate." Serenity lay awake that night, her long hair splayed across the pillow, her mother's necklace a cold comfort. The piano's keys haunted her, each note a dream she refused to surrender. Owen's words echoed. Your music's got power. Could she trust this stranger's kindness? Could she face a marriage she didn't choose? Elise's voice whispered, "You're meant to shine." Serenity's resolve hardened, but fear clung to her like a shadow, her heart torn between hope and dread. Serenity Allen's heart pounded like a trapped bird as she stood in the cramped Savannah apartment, her long, straight hair pulled tightly into a bun to appease Cynthia's wrath. The air was thick with malice, the walls closing in as her white stepmother's voice sliced through the dim light. "Marry him or leave," Cynthia barked, her hazel eyes glinting with cold triumph. At 27, Serenity's beauty, her deep brown eyes, her graceful frame, was a quiet defiance, but now it felt like a burden, a spark that ignited Cynthia's envy. Her fingers clutched her mother's silver necklace, its cool metal her only anchor, as the weight of a forced marriage to Owen Harris, a man she believed was a blind beggar, crushed her spirit. The pain of betrayal, from her father's silence, her stepmother's hatred, her stepsister's scorn, threatened to drown her, yet a flicker of Elise's voice whispered, "You're meant to shine." Cynthia's ultimatum came like a storm. Days ago in the kitchen, she'd cornered Serenity, her lips curling into a venomous sneer. "You'll take that useless Owen Harris," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "Abigail's too good for a broke, blind nobody. You're perfect for him." Serenity's stomach churned, her hands trembling on the counter. "I don't even know him," she whispered, her voice breaking. Cynthia laughed, a sound that cut deeper than words. "Know him? You don't need to. A girl like you, black, penniless, should be grateful for any man." The racial sting in her words burned, a reminder that in this house, Serenity's heritage was a crime. She glanced at Henry, slumped in his armchair, his whiskey bottle glinting in the lamplight. "It's your duty," he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. His silence was a betrayal sharper than Cynthia's cruelty. Abigail reveled in the scheme. She sauntered into the room, her blonde curls bouncing, her blue eyes glinting with smug superiority. "You and that beggar will make a cute couple," she taunted, leaning against the fridge. "I'll be dancing at my own wedding to a real millionaire while you're stuck with nothing. Thanks for taking one for the team, Serenity." Her laughter was a lash, each word laced with disdain for Serenity's blackness, her dreams, her very existence. Serenity's chest tightened, her vision blurring as she fought back tears. She wanted to scream, to hurl the truth, that she was more than their pawn, but the weight of their hatred silenced her. Abigail's words echoed Cynthia's, a cruel chorus that branded Serenity as unworthy. The pain drove Serenity to the Savannah Park, her only refuge, where the public piano stood beneath sprawling oaks. She played, her long hair loosened, swaying as her fingers poured her anguish into a melody of loss. Owen Harris was there, his white cane beside him, his sunglasses hiding his eyes. "Your song's heavy today," he said softly, his voice a balm to her wounds. Serenity's heart raced, torn between trust and fear. She'd shared her dreams with him, her mother's death, her vision of an arts center. But now, facing a marriage to this stranger, she felt betrayed anew. "Why did you agree to this?" she asked, her voice trembling with hurt. "Did they force you?" Owen's hand reached for hers, steady and warm. "I chose this, Serenity," he said, his tone firm yet gentle, "to save you from them. Trust me, just this once." His words stirred hope, but also confusion. Why would a beggar sacrifice himself for her? Serenity's resolve wavered, her eyes searching his hidden gaze. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want this, but I have nowhere else to go." Owen's smile was small, almost secretive. "You're stronger than you know," he said. "Your music proves it." Serenity clung to his words, her mother's necklace cool against her skin, but fear gnawed at her. Could she trust this man she barely knew? Could she face a marriage forced by Cynthia's malice? The park's oaks seemed to whisper Elise's voice, "You're meant to shine." But the path ahead was a dark, uncharted storm. The day of the wedding arrived, a cold morning that felt like a sentence. Serenity stood before the courthouse, her thrift store dress clinging to her frame, her long hair tucked into a bun as Cynthia demanded. The building's gray walls loomed, a prison for her dreams. Cynthia stood nearby, her smile a blade, her pale face glowing with victory. "You're doing the right thing," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Abigail's future is safe now." Abigail, in a sleek dress, smirked. "Enjoy your miserable life, Serenity," she whispered, her blue eyes glinting. "You and your beggar belong together." Serenity's heart twisted, the racial venom in Abigail's words a fresh wound. Henry lingered at the edge, his eyes on the ground, his silence louder than ever. Inside, the courtroom was stark, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. Serenity's fingers gripped her mother's necklace, the silver a lifeline as the judge prepared the ceremony. She glanced at Owen, his worn jacket and sunglasses oddly familiar, his calm presence a stark contrast to her turmoil. The memory of their park conversations, his gentle questions, her shared dreams, flickered in her mind, but the weight of this moment crushed her hope. She was a sacrifice, a black girl deemed worthless, forced into a marriage to save Abigail's golden future. The judge's voice droned, asking if she was ready. Serenity's throat tightened, her heart screaming against the vow she was about to take. Could she endure this? Could she shine in this darkness? As the ceremony loomed, Serenity's resolve flickered, her mother's words a faint echo against Cynthia's cruelty. She stood on the edge of a life she didn't choose, her beauty and dreams mocked by those who should have loved her. Yet somewhere deep within, a spark of defiance burned, a promise to herself that she would not break. Serenity Allen stood on the cracked steps of the Savannah courthouse, her long, straight hair escaping its tight bun, strands dancing in the humid breeze like a whisper of freedom, her deep brown eyes still raw from the tears of a forced vow, burned with a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a flicker of defiance. At 27, her beauty was a quiet rebellion, but her heart felt like a battlefield, scarred by Cynthia's malice and her father's silence. The weight of her mother's silver necklace against her chest was her only anchor as she faced Owen Harris, the man she'd just married, his sunglasses and worn jacket a stark contrast to the chaos within her. Moments ago, she'd bound herself to a stranger, believing him a blind beggar, a pawn in her white stepmother's cruel scheme. Now, Owen's voice broke the silence, sharp and unexpected. "We're not staying in Savannah. We're going to Boston." Serenity's breath caught, her heart lurching. "Boston?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. The word felt foreign, 1,000 miles from the suffocating apartment where Cynthia's hatred ruled. Before she could process, a sleek Rolls-Royce purred up to the curb, its polished surface gleaming under the Georgia sun. Owen's lips curved into a faint smile, and with a single, deliberate motion, he removed his sunglasses, revealing clear, piercing blue eyes that locked onto hers. "I'm not blind, Serenity," he said, his voice steady, almost gentle. "I'm Owen Harris, founder of a music tech empire. I was never broke." He tossed his white cane into a nearby trash bin, the clatter echoing like a gunshot in her mind. Serenity's knees buckled, her hand clutching her mother's necklace as if it could steady her. "You lied to me," she choked, anger surging through her veins. Her eyes, wide with shock, searched his face, the same face she'd seen in the park, listening to her music, offering kindness when no one else had. "All those talks, those moments, they were a game?" Her voice cracked, the pain of betrayal cutting deeper than Cynthia's cruelty. Owen stepped closer, his expression softening, but she recoiled, her long hair swaying like a shield. "I trusted you," she said, her words raw. "You were the only one who saw me. And now, this?" Owen's gaze held hers unflinching. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, his voice low, earnest. "I was betrayed once, by a woman who loved my money, not me. I faked this, poverty, blindness, to find someone real. You, Serenity, saw me when I was nothing. Your kindness, your music, it's why I chose this." He gestured to the car, the driver standing silently by the open door. "I agreed to this marriage to save you from them, from Cynthia, from that house." Serenity's chest tightened, her emotions a tangled knot of anger and confusion. His words stirred the memory of their park conversations, his gentle questions, her shared dreams of an art center. But the sting of his deception was a fresh wound. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, her voice rising. You let me think you were trapped, like me. Owen's jaw tightened, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. I had to be sure, he said. Sure that your heart was true, not swayed by wealth. I saw your pain, serenity, your strength. I wanted to give you a way out. She shook her head, tears brimming. A way out? By lying? How do I trust you now? Her voice broke. The weight of her life, her mother's death, her father's silence, Cynthia's hatred, crashing down. Owen's hand reached out, but he stopped short, respecting her space. You don't have to trust me yet, he said softly, but come with me. Let me show you a life where you can shine. Serenity's heart raced, torn between a fury and the desperate need to escape. She thought of Elise, her mother's voice echoing. You're meant to shine. But could she trust this man, this stranger who'd worn a mask? Before she could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. Serenity! Abigail stormed toward them, her blonde curls bouncing, her blue eyes wide with shock. She'd followed them from the courthouse, overhearing whispers about Owen's car. He's rich, she hissed, her face twisting with envy. You can't have him. Share him, Serenity. He's supposed to be mine. The racial venom in her tone, her assumption that Serenity, a black woman, didn't deserve this, burned like acid. Serenity's eyes narrowed, her voice cold. You laughed at me, Abigail. Called me nothing. Live with that now. Abigail's mouth opened, but no words came. Her arrogance crumbled. Serenity turned to Owen, her resolve hardening. I don't trust you, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. But I have nothing left here. I'll go. Owen's face softened with relief, and he gestured to the car. You won't regret this, he said, his tone a promise. As they drove to the airport, Serenity's mind churned. The Rolls-Royce's leather seats felt alien, a world away from her Savannah prison. She glanced at Owen, his calm demeanor unnerving. Was this another trap or a chance at freedom? At the airport, a private jet waited, its sleek lines gleaming. Serenity's heart pounded as they boarded, her long hair catching the wind. The cabin was luxurious, a stark contrast to her faded dress. As the plane ascended, Savannah shrank below, a city of pain she was leaving behind. Owen sat beside her, silent, giving her space. You're free now, he said finally, his voice soft. Whatever you choose, stay, leave, start over. I'll support you. Serenity's fingers traced her mother's necklace, her emotions a whirlwind. Anger at Owen's lie clashed with hope for a new beginning. Could she find her shine in this unknown world? The jet soared toward Boston, carrying her toward a future she couldn't yet see. Serenity Allen's fingers glided over the polished keys of a grand piano, her long, straight hair shimmering under the soft glow of a Boston cafe's lights. At 27, her beauty, deep brown eyes alight with newfound fire, a grace that defied her past, was a testament to her resilience. The melody she played, a soulful blend of sorrow and triumph, filled the room, each note a step away from the pain of Savannah. Her mother's silver necklace rested against her chest, a quiet reminder of Elise's voice. You're meant to shine. In this new city, far from Cynthia's malice and Abigail's scorn, Serenity was beginning to believe it. Yet her heart still carried the weight of betrayal, her father's silence, Owen's deception, making her wary of the warmth now surrounding her. Boston was a fresh canvas, but could she paint a life free of shadows? The cafe was alive with murmurs, patrons captivated by Serenity's music. She'd arrived in Boston days ago, stepping off Owen's private jet into a world that felt like a dream. The Harris family, Ellen, Robert, and Sophie, had enveloped her in a warmth she'd never known, their waterfront mansion a stark contrast to Savannah's suffocating apartment. Ellen's embrace, soft and maternal, had stirred tears in Serenity's eyes. Your family now, Ellen had said, her voice a balm. But Serenity's trust was fragile, scarred by years of cruelty. Owen's lie that he was a blind beggar, not a music tech mogul, still stung, though his kindness in the park lingered in her heart. Give me time, she'd told him on the jet, her voice trembling. I don't know how to trust again. Owen had nodded, his blue eyes steady. "I'll wait," he said, his tone a promise. At Berklee College of Music, where Owen enrolled her, Serenity found her footing. The campus buzzed with creativity, but as a black woman, she faced whispers of doubt. "She's only here for diversity," a classmate muttered during her first week, the words echoing Cynthia's taunts. Serenity's jaw tightened, her long hair swaying as she sat at the piano, pouring her pain into a composition. Her professor, a grizzled jazz musician, heard her play and paused. "You've got a voice," he said, his tone gruff but kind. "Don't let anyone silence it." Serenity's heart swelled, her fingers trembling as she played, each note a defiance against the prejudice she'd endured. Her first piece, a soul jazz score for a student film, earned applause, its raw emotion cutting through the room like a blade. Music became her sanctuary, but it was also a battlefield. Serenity faced skepticism from peers, their glances lingering on her skin, her hair, as if she didn't belong. "You're good, but can you compete?" a rival asked, her tone laced with condescension. Serenity's eyes flashed, her voice steady. "Watch me." She threw herself into her work, composing late into the night, her long hair falling over sheet music littered with notes. The pain of Savannah, Cynthia's sneers, Abigail's laughter, fueled her, each melody a rebellion. Owen was there, not pushing, but present, bringing her coffee during study sessions, listening to her drafts. "Your music's alive," he said one night, his voice soft. "It's you." Serenity's heart wavered, torn between gratitude and the lingering sting of his lie. Her dream of an arts center took shape in Boston. Inspired by Elise, Serenity opened Elise's Melody, a nonprofit offering free piano lessons to underserved kids, especially black children facing the same barriers she had. One evening, she taught a young girl, Amara, whose shy fingers stumbled over the keys. "I can't do it," Amara whispered, her eyes downcast. Serenity knelt beside her, her long hair brushing the girl's shoulder. "You can," she said, guiding Amara's hands. "Your heart's in these notes. Let it sing." Amara's smile, tentative but bright, mirrored Serenity's own at that age, stirring a warmth she hadn't felt since Elise's days. Elise's Melody grew, its classes filling with kids whose laughter echoed her mother's dream. Serenity's chest tightened with pride, but also fear. Could she sustain this, or would her past drag her back? Owen's patience was a quiet force. He didn't press for love, but his actions spoke. He funded Elise's Melody, attended her cafe performances, and shared stories of his own struggles, building his empire, losing trust after betrayal. "I lied to protect myself," he admitted one night, sitting across from her in the mansion's garden. "But I see you, Serenity, and I'll never hurt you again." His blue eyes held hers, unguarded, and for the first time, Serenity felt a spark beyond friendship. "I'm trying," she said, her voice soft, her necklace cool against her skin. "But I've been broken too long." Owen smiled, undeterred. "You're not broken, you're rebuilding." His words stirred hope, a fragile flame she was afraid to nurture. Their connection deepened, not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments. One evening, as Serenity played a new piece, a melody of loss and renewal, Owen sat beside her, his presence steady. "This one's different," he said, his voice low. "It's you, finding your way." Serenity's fingers faltered, her heart racing. She looked at him, his face softened by the moonlight, and felt something shift. Was this love or gratitude for the man who'd given her a chance to shine? She didn't know, but his belief in her was a lifeline, pulling her from the shadows of Savannah. Serenity's life in Boston was a rebirth, but the scars of her past lingered. She'd wake at night, her long hair splayed across the pillow, haunted by Cynthia's sneers and Abigail's laughter. The racial prejudice she faced at Berklee echoed their venom, but she pushed forward, her music a shield. Elise's Melody was her heart made real, a testament to her mother's legacy. Teaching Amara, seeing her own pain in the girl's eyes, gave Serenity purpose. She was shining, just as Elise had promised, but the fear of betrayal, of Owen, of this new life, clung to her like a shadow. Serenity Allen stood outside the sterile hospital room, her long, straight hair catching the fluorescent light like a dark river under moonlight. At 35, her beauty, deep brown eyes alight with hard-won strength, a grace forged in pain, was a quiet testament to her journey. Her fingers brushed her mother's silver necklace, a steadying anchor as she faced the ghosts of Savannah. Inside, Cynthia, her white stepmother, lay frail from a stroke, her once venomous presence reduced to a shadow. Abigail, her stepsister, had called, her voice stripped of its old arrogance, begging Serenity to come. The weight of their betrayal, Cynthia's malice, Abigail's taunts, Henry's silence, pressed against Serenity's heart, stirring a storm of anger and sorrow. Yet a deeper resolve burned within, fueled by Elise's whisper, "You're meant to shine." Could she face the woman who'd tried to break her, the family who'd cast her aside, and still find peace? The hospital corridor was cold, its antiseptic smell sharp in Serenity's lungs. She'd built a new life in Boston, her music soaring in Hollywood films, her art center, Elise's Melody, a beacon for children like the girl she once was. But the scars of Savannah lingered, racial slurs, torn sheet music, a forced marriage meant to bury her dreams. Cynthia's cruelty had been a blade, Abigail's laughter a lash, and Henry's indifference a wound that never healed. Now standing here, Serenity felt the past clawing at her, threatening to dim the light she'd fought to reclaim. Her long hair swayed as she took a deep breath, steeling herself. She wasn't that 27-year-old girl anymore, trembling under Cynthia's hatred. She was a composer, a mother, a woman who'd turned pain into power. Abigail met her at the door, her blonde curls limp, her blue eyes dulled by failure. The smug stepsister who'd once taunted, "You'll marry a beggar," was gone, replaced by a woman humbled by broken dreams, failed investments, a life that never matched her mother's ambitions. "Serenity," Abigail said, her voice cracking. "Mama's bad. Please talk to her." Serenity's jaw tightened, the memory of Abigail's scorn burning. "Why should I?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "You laughed when she forced me into that marriage. Called me nothing." Abigail flinched, her eyes dropping. "I was wrong," she whispered. "We were all wrong. Please." Serenity's heart twisted, anger clashing with a flicker of pity. She nodded, stepping inside, her necklace cool against her skin. Cynthia lay in the hospital bed, her pale face gaunt, her hazel eyes clouded with regret. The woman who'd sneered, "A black girl like you belongs in a maid's uniform," was barely recognizable, her venom drained by illness. "Serenity," she rasped, her voice weak. I was jealous. Your beauty, your talent, it threatened me, threatened Abigail. I pushed you to that beggar to break you." Serenity's chest tightened, the pain of those years flooding back. Torn music, public humiliation, racial slurs. She wanted to scream, to hurl every hurt back at Cynthia, but she stood still, her long hair a quiet shield. "You tried to destroy me," she said, her voice steady but raw. "You and Abigail mocked my dreams, my heritage. Why should I care now?" Henry stood by the window, his face lined with shame. The father who'd let Cynthia's cruelty reign, who'd stayed silent as Serenity suffered, stepped forward. "I failed you," he said, his voice breaking. "I was weak, drowning in grief and whiskey. I let her hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself." Serenity's eyes burned, the weight of his betrayal heavier than Cynthia's malice. "You were my father," she said, her voice trembling. "You were supposed to protect me. Instead, you let me be a sacrifice." Henry's shoulders slumped, tears streaking his face, but Serenity felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache. She turned back to Cynthia, her resolve hardening. "I forgive you," she said, her voice clear, cutting through the room's silence. "Not because you deserve it, but because I won't carry your poison anymore. I'm free, of you, of your hatred, of Savannah." Cynthia's eyes widened, a flicker of shame crossing her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words barely audible. Abigail's head bowed, her arrogance gone. Serenity's long hair swayed as she stepped back, her necklace glinting. "You don't get to be my family," she said. I've found mine. People who love me for me, not my pain. As she left the room, Serenity's thoughts turned to Ethan, her half-brother, now 10, who loved music like she did. She'd learned from Abigail that he played piano, his fingers dancing over keys in a way that echoed her own childhood. Serenity's heart softened, remembering her own struggle. She couldn't save the boy from Cynthia's shadow, but she could give him a chance. In secret, she set up an anonymous scholarship to fund his music lessons, ensuring he'd have the opportunities she'd fought for. Days later, at one of her concerts, Serenity saw Ethan in the audience, his eyes bright as he clapped, a tiny piano pin on his jacket. Her breath caught, a tear slipping down her cheek. He didn't know her gift, but she knew she'd honored Elise's legacy. Serenity walked out into Boston's crisp air, her long hair catching the sunlight, her heart lighter. The pain of Savannah, Cynthia's sneers, Abigail's taunts, Henry's silence, was a shadow she'd left behind. Her music, her art center, her family with Owen and their children were her light. Forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for her, a release from the chains of their cruelty. She'd turned their malice into a symphony of triumph, proving a black woman could shine brighter than their hate. The hospital faded behind her, a final chapter closed, her mother's voice clear in her mind. You're meant to shine. Serenity Allen's journey from a betrayed girl in Savannah to a shining composer in Boston proves that pain can forge strength and dreams can defy cruelty. Her story resonates, a melody of resilience and forgiveness that echoes in us all. What did her triumph stir in you? Could you forgive like she did, or would you walk away? Comment below with your thoughts. Your stories fuel our shared journey. Thank you for joining Serenity's fight, for letting her music touch your heart. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this tale. We'll meet again with another story to lift your soul. Until then, keep shining, just like Serenity.